Welcome, everybody. My name is Sally Jewell, and I'm the former U.S. Secretary of the Interior and also a proud Husky. And it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2021 Doug Walker Lecture entitled An Indigenous Perspective on the Rights of Nature. But before we dive in, I want to begin by acknowledging that the campus and the buildings of the University of Washington are on the land of the Coast Salish peoples, land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands in this region, and we are deeply grateful for their stewardship. I also want to talk a moment about Doug Walker, the namesake of this lecture series. Doug was instrumental to the founding of the College of the Environment in 2009, and as a co-chair of the advisory board and a passionate advocate for the environment and for connecting youth to nature, especially those from underserved communities. He was also a very good friend, a fellow adventurer, and a board member of REI when we first met in 1996. Doug passed away tragically on the last day of 2015. In order to carry on and amplify Doug's passion for outdoor recreation and his unending desire for learning, the College of the Environment hosts this annual lecture on health and nature. Now, before I introduce our guest, I'd also like to take a moment to thank Maggie Walker. Maggie, we cannot thank you enough for your extraordinary leadership, strategic vision, advocacy for the College of the Environment and the UW, and your continued partnership. I also want to thank our sponsors for this event: REI, the Seattle Foundation, Filson, the Wilderness Society, Earth Lab, and Nature and Health, both at the University of Washington. With their support, tonight's event was possible. I'd like to add that Nature and Health will be hosting a related virtual conference October 12th through 14th on generating understanding across communities and disciplines. So, allow me now, please, to introduce our featured guest for today. Paulette Jordan is a citizen of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, located in northern Idaho, and she has Sincayus, Nez Perce, and Yakama Palouse ancestry. She was born into a family with a deep history in ranching and farming, and her family still holds timber and farmland. Paulette was raised to fight for the needs of her community and to protect the Earth's priceless natural resources. She served on the Coeur d'Alene Tribal Council, becoming its youngest elected member at that time, and she served in Idaho's House of Representatives. In 2018, she became the Democratic nominee for governor of Idaho, the first woman nominated to the position by a major party in Idaho, and the first Native American woman nominated for governor in U.S. history. In 2020, she became Idaho's Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate. She continues to hold leadership positions with the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians, as well as the National Indian Gaming Association. Paulette graduated from Gonzaga Preparatory in Spokane with honors and is a proud Husky, holding degrees from the UW in communications, comparative literature, and American Indian studies. She first became involved in politics and a variety of other community leadership roles in Seattle while attending the UW. She stresses that she's not a voice for any political party, but rather a voice for the people she serves. She deeply believes in the importance of taking action and fighting for justice while listening with an open heart and mind to a wide range of perspectives and ideas. And as we'll hear, she continues to be an advocate for people and the rights of nature. When she's not working, Paulette enjoys spending time with her sons, horseback riding, and being outside in the greater mountain area. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce to all of you our featured guest for tonight, Paulette Jordan. Welcome, Paulette.
Thank you, Sally. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And I think everybody's probably curious about what is it like to grow up Native American in the Coeur d'Alene tribe on the reservation. So can you tell us a little bit about your early life and your journey?
You know, when we were talking before, I was talking about my upbringing in life and not thinking it's anything special. And in fact, I guess it is. You know, I grew up on the land with my elders, my family, and we're very connected. So we sort of take that for granted, you know, from time to time. We have so many ceremonies, things that we do upon waking up. And one of the greater functions that I have, the biggest and best blessing, I would say, is waking up looking at the mountains and the water and being able to go outside and connect with nature. And part of that is, it's so innocent. You know, and you think about the opportunities when I was growing up, I would get to chase deer in the field and being able to, you know, talk to the birds. And it seems so common, yet it's not. And I always think my children will have that, but they even aren't able to have that on a daily basis. But being able to grow up that way and have that way of life is so special to me to look back on, because today I get to fight for being a voice and a face for nature because of that relationship.
Have you been able to get your boys out into the outdoors?
As much as I can, whether it's through golf or horseback riding, you name it, and of course for our ceremonies. And we are part of a Sundance and our Native church ways, and all of that. Being Indigenous, incorporates so much in prayer and connectedness to not only humanity but nature.
I deeply appreciate that. Thank you. You're best known for politics. So how did you get interested in politics? What led you there?
I often would tell people that I am not a politician. I am often referred to as someone who was bred to be a leader, being that I stand for many great leaders in my lineage. It's just it's one of those fortunate things you have in your life, is having access to people who have a vast wealth of knowledge and experiences, and that stems from generations upon generations of people, nations upon nations, and all of that comes down into my own DNA, my own cellular makeup. And I tell people that it just seems very natural now to me. But I remember starting as a young child, just being raised up by my elders to speak and to be taught to express myself in the best way that I can, to be very holistic about my words and to be thoughtful as a kid. And I learned that, well, not everybody is taught this. Is that not a thing? And, and I remember telling my son the same thing that I was told when I was a kid, and he burst into tears because he, as young kids, they don't always realize the heavy responsibility that they hold, especially as young Indigenous leaders. And I said, we are bred this way to be leaders, and it's a very deep responsibility, but one we don't take for granted, and we definitely want to honor that. So I would say, well, I was sort of encouraged, pushed, however you want to look at it. It's a very big privilege to be supported by these elder leaders, to be put in leadership positions, and then to continue to have that support. And that led from being a student in a school where I was over the vast minority. I was the only Native student for a while, and even in my high school. And having that being a culture shock. But representing my community, my tribe and people in the region, it felt like a lot of tribes would come just to support my athletics and my academics, and that was really very heartfelt to me. That kept me going. And then graduating from there and going on to college, it was the same thing. Our community really rallies around young Indigenous leadership, as we should. And so that it continues to elevate us into roles and spaces where we're not always seen. And I really attribute all of that to my grandfather and my grandmothers, many like Lucy Covington, who many know, and I believe you may have maybe crossed paths or know others who worked with her, and all of that that knowledge, that leadership style, it does flow through me because of them. I just feel that I'm a reflection of them at this point.
That's great. Well, we're glad you got into politics. It put Paulette Jordan on the map, but there's so much more that you have to offer.
Absolutely.
An Indigenous perspective on the rights of nature, that's the topic of the discussion tonight. Can you help people understand what you think of when you think of the rights of nature, and where that perspective comes from?
It's a little bit foreign at this point, even though it's been going on for a few decades now. It's a global construct. But at the same time, while Indigenous peoples were having this conversation in many parts of the world back in 2010, it's still new to us here in the U.S., primarily because we're still built on the Western construct that everything is to be owned, and it's very greedy. And unfortunately, it's shifted our mindset to think that we can own things, that we can own water, we can own natural resources, and the fact that they think that we can own land. That's not a concept that Indigenous peoples hold within. I still cannot wrap my mind around owning land or owning water and owning really anything that is not to be obtained or to own. And yet we're now having to promote this movement that is both a social and a cultural and a legal movement. And that movement really is going to help elevate Indigenous voices, because the Indigenous way of thinking, the Indigenous mindset is all about interdependence. We say this word, interdependence, because it means waking up to the reality that, you know, we're not here to own anything, but we are here to flow with everything in balance, to actually have a harmony to everything around us, including nature. So we should be mindful of the fact that we are interdependent on water being clean and clear, air being clean to breathe, and land to be able to harvest from. So it gives back when we give to it, and that's the relationship that people must acknowledge before we can start coming full circle to having a good economy, good health, education. All of that comes to balancing nature. I mean, it really is all connected when people think about it. And for those who want to have a business argument, you know, we can say, well, the economy is based off of the balance of the environment. You know, everything can boost each other, and everything can be balanced and still work together. And the other concept that comes to light is when we talk about, you know, why are the rights of nature being brought to the table? And that means somehow that's going to impact my rights as a human being, when in fact your rights are elevated when the rights of nature are elevated. You know, so you're not giving up anything just to have nature have a seat at the table. And yet we still struggle with that today. As we know, we struggle with women having equal rights to men, and we see that in anything, you know, when someone feels like they're giving up rights just to allow someone else to have more or equal rights. So that's really the movement that we're a part of, my organization and the groups that we're working with. But we're elevating this idea because it's an idea that's it's not new, but it's new in today's generation, because this is, again, it's an Indigenous way of thinking. It's the fact that we're putting this Indigenous way of thinking, this Indigenous knowledge, into a legal format, because that's the way the Western construct is at this moment.
Yeah, it's been so interesting as I've worked with tribes around the world, particularly in this country, this notion that we are nature. We are just a part of nature. And when we take from nature, you know, we need to do it in a way that is, in today's words, sustainable, right? It is about not taking the last of anything, not taking too much of anything. And that is very different than the concept that man sort of has dominion over nature, which is, you know, more of a common way of thinking. I think we are all aware that we are interdependent on nature much more now than we were before.
Yeah, and it's not only just the idea of realizing that we're working together in terms of nature, working with humanity and humanity working with nature, but it's also the aspect of mindfulness. And we really want to get folks to understand that working with Indigenous peoples and all cultures, all walks of life, it helps everyone. And we want to see that balance in society today, and that's what we want to get to, is that changing this concept that that corporations have rights over people. Yeah. Because that's where we sit today.
Or that corporations are people.
Or that corporations are people.
Yeah.
It's running our government, it's running our communities. And we had to push that back and insert nature in that seat.
That's good.
And that's where we can get back to holistic thinking, holistic healthcare, a holistic economy, and really balancing out our societies in the best way possible.
You know, there are many of us that have been to Lake Coeur d'Alene. It's certainly beautiful on the surface.
God's country, as we say.
God's country, yeah. There's a lot of the Northwest that I would say qualifies for that. We're very fortunate to live in this part of the world. You know, I think back on a situation that I had to deal with up close and personal when I was Secretary of the Interior, and it had to do with water rights, and that was the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and their frustration and challenge to pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline, that was running under their lake, which was dammed by the Army Corps of Engineers and flooded their most fertile farmlands years ago. But it was run there because the city of Bismarck didn't want it running north of them and potentially impacting their water supply. This is about the rights of nature, I think, in that example. But I never thought of it that way. I thought of it in terms of the rights of the people there, but it really is the rights of nature. Your own tribe, the Coeur d'Alene tribe, also had a challenge with the health of your lake. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that situation, what happened?
Oh, yeah. Well, first, I want to thank you for that. You know, being there, being part of Standing Rock's movement, and all the people that are around that waterway. 17 million people that would have impacted and still impacts.
Yeah.
But the fact that you stood up as an official, Secretary of the Interior, supporting the tribal nations, all the voices coming together. I mean, it was a worldwide movement. And I just want to thank you for that. It's huge.
Thank you.
How that correlates with the Coeur d'Alene tribe and our battle back in the early 2000s, we won one of many rare legal cases, and this was at a time when 5 cases were standing in the Supreme Court, and one of those cases was successful, and that was the Coeur d'Alene tribe's case. But this was a decades-long battle, and I was part of it towards the end after many elders had stepped up to take that mantle, but as they passed on, I was the young one that stepped up to the same plate and was able to take on the title of Lake Ambassador. But those who were before me, they fought hard in recognizing that relationship of guardian to the water and acknowledging that, hey, we have a responsibility. We have to make sure that we step up to the mining companies, all the corporations that were polluting our lake system and the tributary in and of itself in the inland waters. In that battle, it's interesting because you think about the way the tribe's perspective had to come through all the local and the statewide and the national, the federal layers of government, just to help them understand that relationship that we've had for thousands of years, and until it came down to this decision in favor of our tribe, but it was the southern third of the lake that we were given guardianship of. Even though when you think about it, all of the treaties in and of itself, they were all there to acknowledge the guardianship of whatever water or lake or land that the tribes resided on. And that relationship, guardianship status, is really what it was about for the Coeur d'Alene tribe, to be able to keep that water clean and everything else, the entire ecosystem that it impacted. And that's the whole point of the rights of nature, is to also acknowledge that treaty right that all the tribes are upholding to this day and age. But that's not a relationship that the U.S. often wants to acknowledge. So that was a huge win that set a precedent, and that is a similar formula for the rights of nature.
Yeah, I think it's a great illustration because Lake Coeur d'Alene was central to your tribe and its ecosystem and the tributaries that came to it. The mining upstream really put, I'm sure, a lot of heavy metals into the lake and impacted that.
Yep.
Lake's also a beautiful place. Many people have homes on the lake. It's the concept of the tribal concept of this is a part of a whole ecosystem versus land ownership. So getting a third of the lake back when the whole lake is polluted doesn't really solve the problem and address the rights of nature.
No, it doesn't.
It's a painful lesson. It's an important win, but bittersweet, right?
It is very bittersweet, but it's a foot in the door.
It is a foot in the
And
door.
I think it'll help other people understand the direction that tribes are, and God willing, but also with the support of others, other communities around them, will supporting the rights of rivers and the rights of the lake and the rights of nature overall, because that does help sustain everyone, from the business community to the folks, the residents, everyone, including future generations. People don't understand what it means to think 7 generations ahead.
Right.
That's another construct, that's an indigenous way of thinking that isn't a Western construct. So it's, there are differences in culture that really apply here, but we want to make sure that people understand that as tribes making decisions, asking for guardianship that we've always had, it's because of the children who are coming to follow us that we want to protect their access to the same resources you enjoy today.
Yeah. There's a phrase that I used often in Interior, which is, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So what kind what are we doing to the earth today that we're borrowing from our children, and are we proud of that? And I think there's been quite an awakening, including in our own region with the dams on our river system, what that's done to the salmon, what the salmon have done to the orca and other animals, and a real rethinking of how we have harnessed nature for our own benefit, but what are the downsides?
Absolutely, and we're starting to feel those, especially inland. For people who are identified around their culture is sustained by salmon or the resources that they thrive upon.
Yeah.
And every tribe, has that identity,
Mm-hmm.
from whaling to those who are fishing inland and even hunting more inland. But that's the real challenge today.
Yeah.
Is helping people understand how interconnected the tribes are and how much that correlates with our culture and just really who we are spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
I've had elders say that I'm no longer here as an Indigenous
Mm-hmm.
person because the salmon are no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that's mind-blowing, because if you think about it, one person's existence isn't there without the existence of another.
Mm-hmm.
That spiritual connection,
Mm-hmm.
that right there is what we're acknowledging, because that also says everything is connected. Without this here, I don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to say that we're all equal in this ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have to fight for it. So,
There's I think, a greater understanding today than perhaps at any other point in our history. And it's at a time when, the Earth is feeling the impacts of our carbon release into the atmosphere and so on. And as you look worldwide, the most intact ecosystems around the world that are critical for biodiversity are under the stewardship of the indigenous people of those lands
Mm-hmm.
who have been there. And I hope this is a chance for all of us to awaken on the rights of nature and our interdependence, as you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So, how would you like us to achieve change? How should we rethink the relationship that we have to the environment?
To me, it seems so easy, but at the same time, it is challenging. Also because I'm a businesswoman, you're a businesswoman, we operate on so many levels and so many
Mm-hmm.
spheres. The challenge is humbling ourselves. But, we've had the COVID pandemic, we've been isolated, and a lot of people, I think, have been able to sit with themselves and really think about their life and how they want to move forward. And this is why I think it's a beautiful time, even though it's a pandemic and it's tough. But the time being alone with yourself, it also helps elevate your own inner spirit, your own inner consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're able to talk about meditating and prayer, and people are very receptive to that. But being of prayer and being able to be grateful for every little thing, and sometimes it takes that. It takes taking something away to teach you how to be grateful for what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Because we lived with everything for so long. We lived with clean air and clean water and having access to health care and everything that we need to prevent us from getting sicker until something hits us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start losing loved ones and wealth and homes and good food and clean water. All of that is going away. People experiencing fires, people who were experiencing the climate crisis, on our coastlines, from the Alaskan Native villages
Oh
to
my gosh, I know.
the Quinault, here
Yeah.
in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk to many people who are impacted by any single crisis, from financial to climate, who will tell you today how grateful they are for every little thing that they have. And so today I tell folks that the best thing you can do is to wake up being grateful,
Mm-hmm.
because that collective consciousness is really what's going to change the face of this planet. It's going to change communities, it's going to change families, it will change you yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, is the real basic function, being able to step away from the corporate mindset, the Western culture, because both are really outdated facets that, we have to start thinking more holistically. And once we can think more holistically by saying, that nature matters, giving nature rights, that's going to help us shift, but also elevating the voices within that have been suppressed
Mm-hmm.
and invisible for centuries now, which are the Indigenous voices. Indigenous peoples, they hold answers to many of our problems that we face today, with how we manage our forests, to healthcare, natural medicines,
Mm-hmm.
Even healing ourselves with our ceremonies. But all that begins by being able to wake up every morning and being grateful and acknowledging your ancestors, talking to your people spiritually, speaking to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
Honoring yourself. Because as my partner would often say, if we don't love ourselves, how are we expected to love anyone or anything else?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But the second best place is getting people to to support the tribes and their movements, because we have several tribes in this country who are moving forward. They're incorporating ordinances, they're ratifying language into their constitutions. We have tribes who are supporting the rights of rivers. One very local here, the Nez Perce tribe, who just incorporated language into their code, acknowledging the Snake River's rights. And these functions are beautiful in and of itself, but also major shifts, because they're going to have a lot of enemies in some ways, people who are going to feel threatened.
Yep.
And it's that fear that they're going to be up against. And the fear tends to resonate, you know, in mass culture with money behind it. And so they're going to have campaigns that are going to go against them. So honestly, for folks who are watching and in support of the environment and wanting to see a more balanced or holistic set of thinking or leadership, you know, rise up, those voices who are coming to the table, like the Nez Perce or like the Quinault, you know, there are many here in this country, even here in the Pacific Northwest, they are needing your support. They're needing the support of you know, nonprofit organizations, support of the community, and people, just any walk of life, really, to come and help them, because that's going to be a challenge, you know, for people, this new way of thinking to put nature at the forefront.
Yeah.
And it's hard for a lot of people to think about.
Yeah.
But I think we can all do it together. And of course, we're already doing it within the tribal communities. We're already doing it when you think about our young people. You know, they're right there front and center, even at the World Climate you know, conventions, and at on any climate convention that you see right now going on globally and locally. Our youth are saying, we're ready. We're ready to elevate the environment. We're ready to see some change and balance, and we want our leadership to walk their talk and not just, you know, say a bunch of coined phrases that, you know, speak to us, but really live by action. And that does mean, you know, on a daily basis, making sure that you are walking your talk, you know, not just thinking, but acting on what you're preaching. You know, we say we want to keep water clean. Well, then don't dump this down the drain, or don't, you know, pollute over here. So, and then holding everyone else accountable. But again, it's just that personal integrity that's going to really matter in the end.
Everybody has a role to play. We all have a role to play.
Exactly.
I know in the situation with Standing Rock, it was catalyzed by young people from the tribe who ran on their feet, ran from North Dakota all the way to Washington, D.C. to deliver a petition to the Army Corps of Engineers. That got people's attention, and it rallied the adults in the tribe to take action as well, which was really the genesis of that. And of course, we hear, you know, from Greta Thunberg and others, you know, how dare you do what you're doing to our climate? And I think waking up feeling grateful, as you said, is great advice for all of us. And if there is a silver lining to this pandemic that we're in, it is that I think we have woken up feeling more grateful for nature. People have been outside more, and there is a connection to the lands and landscapes for all of us, I think, that is more acute because of the things that we haven't had access to. So let's hope this is an awakening, because we sure need it right now.
You know, Sally, there's one other thing I want to mention, because I was just recently at our tribe's canoe journey, and we're out to experience our dugout canoes, and before we were entering the water, one of our young elders said to us, don't forget to pray to the water. And that's something our people will always say. My elders would always say this. Whenever you feel in doubt or lonely, or you feel that you need support or guidance, go to water and pray. We've always said that, our people. So this is not a new concept, but I feel that it's new beyond us. And when I want to pass along something, I always remind people that that's something we do, just kind of, like you said, well, not everybody has that experience, so I want to make sure people understand that you can actually go to water and pray, that there are water spirits, and there's a grand water spirit that is listening. And she's a very beautiful being. But when you can go to water and share your thoughts, and just touching her and praying, it's a powerful movement. And I know that people have to kind of think about this, but one of the most amazing concepts of this is that while we're fighting for nature, we're fighting for all the species that are dying every day, we have to understand that Everything has its place, and even whales, our greatest ancestors on this planet, they are singing the healing songs, medicine, into the water molecules as we speak for us right now. And as they sing these songs of medicine into the water molecules, and they're making its way to us, just by you touching water and being grateful and saying your prayer of thanks, that is healing you in the process. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to heal all of us through water. Such a huge and beautiful exchange.
Yeah, I am really heartened by the Indigenous youth that I have met in terms of pride in being Indigenous and a commitment to bringing back the ways of knowing. Let's talk about that a little bit. Other ways of knowing and Indigenous perspectives. You know, how do we incorporate not just science but traditional knowledge in how we take care of this one planet that we have?
Traditional knowledge, you know, it reminds me of this old film, Black Panther. It's one of my favorite films, because at the end it's the chief. He's in Wakanda and he's like, we need to open this world up to everybody because we have all these, you know, fascinating ways to approach the world and the earth and in and of itself, and other cultures that don't have access to that knowledge. And I think the same thing. You know, we have so many ceremonies that teach us how to be grateful for the species that we take that offer their life to heal us. Even water, we have ceremonies around water. Actually, every ceremony is balanced around water. And all that the ceremonies and the prayer, you know, that traditional knowledge it's healing, but it also helps educate us. Because it's, you know, we can go off and be executives, we can go off and be the president, we can do whatever politically and socially, legally, whatever, but it's humbling. It's humbling to sit in a ceremony or any community exchange. A ceremony could be you sitting at the table with your family and your children and reminding your children that they have that right to, and I say right because it's what people are familiar with, but we don't talk about that with Indigenous peoples' rights. It's just way of being, acknowledging your relationship, but encouraging our children to have a relationship with water, having a relationship with their land, the nature around them, the people around them. That teaches all of us to not only be humble, but it's also respect. And that element of respect is missing in today's culture. But respecting nature, respecting your fellow man and our society overall, I think when you get back to that traditional knowledge, that's what that is. In our people with our elders and our children, when you have elders exchanging knowledge to the children, all they're doing is showing them respect. And our children are raised up to acknowledge elders and nature, everyone and everything, the spirits, ancestors, all that's just teaching respect. Because then we're not raised with that concept of anything to be owed or greed, anything to be taken from without giving. So there's balance, there's harmony, and that's really what that is. So you can teach that at the dinner table, you can teach that in the classrooms, you can even teach that in the business place.
Actually, as a business person, when people ask me about leadership or what makes an effective leader, the one word I go to is respect. And it is respect for everyone in an organization, no matter the role they play. Respect for yourself and how you treat yourself. There's no more powerful word, I think. So it's, and it is something that is becoming less common, I think, in our familial relationships with each other in the Western world anyway, and we have a lot to learn. I've read Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and it's a wonderful illustration, I think, of what you've been talking about in terms of the rights of nature and how humans are just a part of that. And she, as a Western scientist as well, a botanist, helps be a translator between two worlds and talks about what she learned, lessons learned in terms of if you're gathering, never take the first that you see and never take the last, but also how humans being part of the landscape were important in terms of things that we now call crop rotation, you know,
Yeah,
right? Sustainable agriculture.
Right.
Those were traditional ways of knowing. That's how they did it. They had to just survive, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you've engaged in a lot of things. You've started a nonprofit or working in nonprofit, Save American Salmon. Or Save the American Salmon? Can you help us understand a little bit about that?
Well, so after, actually, I will go back even a step further because we call him Uncle Billy Frank Jr.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I will say to everyone that he was the reason why you and I have met. You know, he introduced us at a function you held in D.C. And Uncle Billy Frank, he's been really like many of our elders, just one of those who've always been there at the front line encouraging us. It really came back in 2018 to me as a more of a vision, but it was actually in a ceremony, and it came down to me as a strong impression that I had to step up to be a voice for nature.
Mm-hmm.
And when the ancestors call upon you to do something, you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You do it without question. And so I pretty much put everything aside and just focused on fighting for the rights of nature and being a voice and listening to everything around me and trying to find a way, a place, purpose for everything, and of course, having a great team. We ended up formulating Save the American Salmon. Once we created this nonprofit, the nonprofit was essentially there to help us build up the team, and we incorporated Earth Law, so we have a strong legal team behind our organization. And all the folks who were working within, you know, we've helped draft language for tribes, and now we're encouraging many tribes in the Pacific Northwest to take on even stronger language with the rights of nature. And so this movement that's created in the Pacific Northwest is not new, because we've actually looked back and have people on our team who worked with other communities throughout the world, and folks who are working on the rights of rivers, now the rights of tributaries, and and it goes further and bigger. But the whole concept of that really was around this directive from my ancestors, and I would say our ancestors, because these are beings who see the way the world is going, and the whole idea was around the fact that if everything keeps going the way it is, we will not only lose our culture, but we'll lose protection of water, and that impacts everybody. So really the one way to change the world and to impact the world is to fight for water. And therefore, we can not only protect our culture, which is this indigenous-based knowledge, but also protect and defend, in a way, the future generations that are coming behind us. Because those folks, many who are coming, they also come with other great visions. And we look at that, and they reminded me that I came here as an Indigenous woman to hold this. So it is a deep responsibility.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful to be able to formulate this into something that is beyond, I guess, the greater purpose that we understand today, because they were already grateful for this conversation and grateful for what we are about to change, and knowing that it's going to help the future generations. So everything in its rightful place. Save the American Salmon, being the rights of nature, and developing Earth Law, speaking in this concept, this construct. That's the direction we're heading into.
It's good. Yeah, Billy Frank, what an extraordinary person. To put himself out there to be arrested, 50 times? Something like that. And he's a colorful character. We both know that. I don't think I ever had a conversation with him that didn't have multiple four-letter words.
Yeah, yeah.
But what a wonderful human being, and so many others with him who, first fought for their treaty rights around salmon and fish, but later realized that even though with the Bolt decision, the tribes collectively were given 50% of the catch, 50% of nothing is nothing, and the ecosystem's in trouble. And his transition to raising awareness about the health of our waters was extraordinary. And I am just so delighted that our state is going to be replacing one of the statues in Statuary Hall with Billy Frank Jr. I think that's just...
Which is very awesome.
It is really awesome.
It's good to
and
see.
It'll send a message, I hope, to all Indigenous people in this country, but also certainly to our own state, about, you know, the mistakes of the past and how we can, how we need to change them for the future, and not a moment too soon. You know, it's watching, I mean, how long did it take to get the Elwha Dam removed? A very long time and an awful lot of money.
Right, yeah.
But you go to the, you know, lower Elwha, Sklallam tribe, and you look at the accretion on the beach, and the shellfish coming back, and the listen to the elders, and look at that free-flowing water. As a, I don't know if you went out there, but you could see the fish banging their heads against the dam. They have rights too. So it's it is nice to see talk even among elected officials about dams running their course and opening rivers up to being free-flowing again, and that will help save the American salmon, and I'm sure you'll be playing a role in that.
Yes, and we are, you know, and I want to mention this, the DNC Council on the Environment and Climate Crisis. We founded this back a few years ago. When we founded this organization under the DNC, you know, we actually promoted a lot of progressive, forward-thinking concepts. Unfortunately not, well, most of them made it into the platform. Yeah. But one of them didn't, and that's around the rights of nature. But the DNC Council of the Environment and Climate Crisis is very strong, and so they're supporting this rights of nature movement. I think that's a huge step, because we can get that into the DNC. Of course, many of the Democratic officials who are underneath that banner, you know, I think a lot of young elected officials are seeing that and really rising up to the challenge that we can incorporate rights of nature and see a balance within the economy, how that helps our systems. So there is some fluidity happening, and I think this conversation, moving beyond the tribal communities and getting into other structures locally, nationally, is going to be huge. Well,
you know, as a politician, you've got a lot of friends on the Republican side of the aisle who are environmentalists. You know, how do we make some of the things we need to see change in politics around the rights of nature resonate across the political aisle, so it doesn't become I win, you lose, or coming across that way, or it's a Democratic plank, or it's a Republican plank? How do we make it, you know, a human plank that we support for all of us in nature as well?
And that's a great point, because that is exactly why I talk about elevating the Indigenous voice. And that is exactly what we're doing with the rights of nature. It elevates the voices that need to be heard. And in this sense, as an Indigenous woman or any Indigenous leader, we are a political class of people. And as a political class, we're not left or right, Republican or Democrat. We are here to serve society, all humanity, nature. It's just the Indigenous knowledge and mindset that to me is the most pure way of being, and being that it's not political. To me, I see that as a way for both sides to come together. And we've seen that already in DC. We've seen that in local communities and statewide communities. And when statewide communities can see the importance or the value of coming together regardless of politics, we can get a lot of things done. We've been able to come together for healthcare in Idaho. We can come together for the environment in this country. And I think that's going to have to happen, but also we're seeing it happen. And like I said before, you know, we have Republican supporters and Democratic supporters. And if you're even non-party, you can still support this movement and the idea, because it's non-political. This is about your life. It's about the ecosystem, the economy, your health care, your livelihood, your very existence, and all of that interdependence, and how that's so important, because it's about codependence and that relationship we have with our environment around us.
Yeah. You know, part of the programs at University of Washington, including supporting this lecture series, is nature and health, and they are so, you know, inextricably linked. And I think, you know, there is an effort to quantify, especially around climate change and so on, natural climate solutions. And really that's about, you know, the rights of nature, but what nature does for humans as well. It's part of the solution. So I think if we move away from language that is charged in certain communities and get to things that people actually care about in their daily lives, because everybody cares about their children. Everybody cares about, you know, their grandchildren if they have them or will have them. And they don't wake up saying, I want to destroy the earth, although that's in fact what we're doing. So I think we know that they're going to want to wake up. We want them to wake up feeling grateful for what they have, but also recognizing that, you know, forests clean our water and clean our air and pull carbon out of the atmosphere. And
that clear cutting is not the solution.
No, exactly. And you know, monoculture crops without any margins for pollinator habitat is a problem, as we see, you know, with things like butterflies and bees and colony collapse and all of that, not to mention zoonotic diseases, which we're now quite familiar with. Yeah.
Right.
So I think we've heard a little bit about why you're so involved in these grand challenges. You've got a charge from your elders that says it's time to do that. So we're delighted that you are. There are some questions that were submitted in advance. So let me run through a few of these while we've got time, if that's all right. Here's one. Climate change has so many effects on human health and the environment. In what ways are you seeing it affect people in particular, both in tribal communities and elsewhere? So climate change has a lot of effects on the environment. How are you seeing it affect people both in tribal communities and elsewhere?
Well, like we said before, you know, the Quinault Nation is a great example in terms of how the climate is impacting even tribal or indigenous communities here in the Pacific Northwest. You know, they've had to move their entire community, shift it more inland. But I would say, you know, when you look at it, those who were in the Alaskan region,
oh my goodness,
deeply impacted, and they're you know, based off of a sustainable living. And of course, when they're the permafrost is melting below their villages, they have to shift, and that's a constant. You know, so they're really impacted. I would say more directly than those of us, especially inland or in Seattle.
Yeah.
But we experience it in so many ways, like us in inland. You know, because of the lower 4 Snake River dams. You know, we are not seeing any salmon, but that's also an impact with you know, the environment as well. But those of us who harvest agriculturally, I myself being one of them, we're seeing major drought, you know, in some areas, so water loss. It's getting warmer and warmer even in the Midwest, and we were just talking about this because it's leading to major forest fires. And speaking with the president of the Oglala Nation just yesterday, you know, he was on the call with his council who were talking about a major fire that hit their community. And it's because they've had major drought, you know, and it's getting warmer and warmer at a time where they're normally getting snow or rain, and they're not getting any of that. And they haven't had that for the last 8 years. And as every community is seeing drought or getting warmer climate conditions, they're facing more fires in their communities, which is either loss of homes and lives, not seeing as abundant of resource, you know, being regenerated, especially for those of us who are reliant on our crops. And so it's impacting us in multiple ways, but I would say most specifically water.
Yeah.
Because water is not, like I said, with our salmon and otherwise, our lake is a big example for my own folks, because beyond the climate, it's really corporate impact, you know, usage. Corporations have really done us in, and that still is cyclical. You know, it hits everything, the entire ecosystem. So yes, we can do something about it. You know, it's not just the people, but the corporations who have more rights, you know, more say than we as a people. And so that needs to be addressed. And that's one way that we're working to address it, with having this conversation about nature, being a voice and a face for nature.
That's good. Really, really important. Yeah. I know when I was secretary, we had made some major fires out here. 2015 burned a lot of the livelihoods of the Colville Nation, who rely on timber for both revenue as well as
we're talking
the health of their community.
Hundreds of millions. I mean, it's a lot of lost revenue. But I mean, if you want to think of that in an economic sense, you know, it has displaced many tribal communities.
Oh yeah.
But many communities in general. You know, I mean, not just tribal, but
absolutely.
Everybody. So I think this is a hard-hitting issue for everyone across the board.
Yeah.
But
I was in Kivalina, Alaska, which is on the Arctic Ocean coast, and it is washing away. And it used to be, an interior barrier island. There were other barrier islands, but they have all washed away, and it's because the ice is melting. And talking to the hunters and those who gather up there, they said the caribou migration patterns are different. They haven't had a successful whale hunt since 1996, and some of that is disturbance from a mine in the area and road noise and so on, and some of that is just because the pack ice has moved farther out and the whales are migrating differently, the caribou are migrating differently, and they are resident there because they were forced to reside there because they needed to have the school, and that's where they used to be, inland and coastal, but they were forced to move to one place, and now it's washing away. And the estimates from the village to relocate were between, I think, $250 and $400 million, and this is a village of less than 1,000. It's so okay. Well, so how do we, and this is another question, incorporate Indigenous perspectives into our regional and national response to climate change? How should we be doing that?
I would say honestly that when you look at the shifts that the tribes are making, it's huge, because we also have an economy to support our people. And because we're sovereign nations, we have a sovereign way of being, so that independence is reliant upon our own economy. The tribes are having to, they're not having to, but they're rightfully shifting into these roles of leadership to acknowledge that we need to place nature at the table and balance out our environment. And we've always been natural stewards or guardians of this environment, so we're stepping back into those roles. But as people who are trying to see that shift, economically, it's going to come with some challenges. So it's going to be a matter of finding a balance between local governments, local communities, residents, businesses, even the federal government, and ensuring that people understand that this is not a shift against you, that it's actually for your own good, for you, to help you and your children. And so I say this because when my particular tribe, the Coeur d'Alene tribe, when we were making shifts as such to fight for the guardianship that we've always had for hundreds of years, thousands of years, it seems, and time immemorial, as we would say. But being a guardian of our lake and having to fight for the rights of our lake and to be the stewards, that was a major uphill battle. And it was the residents, beyond the corporations, but the residents who didn't want to see that shift happen. And cleaning up the waters, we're cleaning up other people's messes, the corporations' messes. But that exchange happening and seeing the people being misinformed, that's a battle that we don't want to have. We want to see supporters, and we need that engagement to be positive. And so I would just seek people's support, in this conversation to acknowledge that the tribes are doing their best in this time and are needing support in all ways that they can possibly see it. I see nonprofits, stepping up, wanting to help the tribes in some ways, but really instead of co-opting the tribes, as we said before,
right,
or tokenizing the tribe's voice in these major spaces, it's to elevate their role, to elevate their presence in conversations, especially in state conversations, where in legislatures they need to ensure that the tribes have a seat at the table, so they're being consulted with and engaged, and they're being part of the decision-making process. And that goes the same for local, with county commissioners and the city councils engaging with the tribes, not just consulting and then walking away from that conversation.
Yeah, I checked that box. It has to be authentic.
Yes.
Since it's an outside question, I think we need to say tribes have to be at the table.
Yes.
It is in federal law, consultation, but it has been oftentimes ignored, and they have to be there. There's a phrase that I have used a lot in terms of why is political engagement important, and it's if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yes, exactly.
And I think tribes, and actually disadvantaged communities in general, have been on the menu for a very long time. And as we have an awakening around environmental justice and equity, which has been certainly people are more acutely aware over the last year,
Yes.
there must be space created. And if there isn't space created, then there must be legal action taken to hold people accountable for that consultation.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm reminded of a discussion I had with someone from Australia about a debate that not debate, but concern that the San Carlos Apache tribe has about Australian mining companies mining under a sacred site of theirs, which would ruin it. And, you know, there's a lot of politics behind it. I could get into that in terms of a particular senator from Arizona facilitating that for an Australian mining company. But
Right.
there is power in Indigenous voices, and the Indigenous voices in Australia have become much more powerful and engaged. And I think that tribes, as we saw in Standing Rock, Indigenous people from around the world coming together around the rights of nature is an important step right now. And I think the world needs it because of the stewardship that we can see tangibly take place in those lands under the stewardship of Indigenous people.
Well, and that's a great point, because Indigenous peoples are rising all over the world
Yeah.
and working together, and they have influenced this whole movement for nature. But also, there's another component that I want to bring up, because I was raised Catholic, and it seems almost to be, you know, the how would I say it, sort of oxymoronic, that Indigenous, you know, people to be Catholic because of what happened and that whole history that we won't get into today. But but being Catholic, it's interesting, because the Christian doctrine of discovery to eradicate Indigenous peoples all over the world, that's still there here in the U.S. under our Supreme Court. But then to also take it a step further, and I want to acknowledge the fact that the Pope came here to the U.S., met with our president at the White House. I was there. I was there with a brother of mine and Councilman David Beam from the Puyallup tribe. And as we were there on the White House lawn, greeting the Pope who came, one thing he pointed out that was very functional to me is he said to the President of the United States of America that he should always make sure that Indigenous peoples are at the forefront of every conversation, because we have the solutions that America needs. And I thought that was huge.
Yeah,
for the Pope to
I
say
heard
this.
him. I got to be there too. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, his encyclical on you know, inequality and the environment is very powerful.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, we are nearing the end of our time, down to a few minutes. Let's see. Do you have advice for aspiring Indigenous leaders and how we can get others to follow in your footsteps? Because your voice is really powerful. How do we magnify that? How do we encourage more to do what you do?
Oh, you know, it's really about listening to your elders first. I had a young man come to me and he said he wants to get into leadership. He said, where do I begin? And I said, well, the first thing is to go to your elders and listen to your leadership in your own community, your tribal community first, because that's where all the answers come. And so he did. He went and sat in an elders meeting, and he engaged, asked questions, and he said, I learned a lot in that meeting. And he said, now I want to get more involved. But that's where it starts. Learning from those who came before you, because they have so much of that, not just the intergenerational knowledge, but the experience. You know, there's a lot of knowledge with our not just our ancestors, but our elders who are still here. And sometimes people take that for granted, that people who are older than them know anything. You know, I think there's that disconnect sometimes with the modern culture. You know, they're on their devices and, you know, and just doing different things than we were as kids. And I know that that's one of the missing components, is that relationship with your elders. So that's what I tell them, is to start there. Because once you can meet with your elders and engage, you're picking up the missing pieces, or just what they put down. And then once you pick up where they left off, there's no disruption. And then you really have purpose, guidance, because you know, we're really just picking up where our elders left off. I'm picking up where my grandma Lucy left off, you know, in defending sovereignty. But I'm defending sovereignty in so many other ways, and whether I'm going in you know, local or national politics, I'm still elevating the voices of our people. And it's that missing component there, you know, the Indigenous voice that needs to be elevated all the way to the White House.
That's good.
And that's going to happen soon. But
well, we got a Secretary of the Interior who's Indigenous, which is pretty terrific.
Yes,
so, Deb Holland, it's great. Well, I want to say that there is an organization called the Center for Native American Youth. So as you work with Indigenous young people, send them there, and there's a lot of inspiration and other young people that want to become leaders and part of the solution. Any final words and a call to action for our audience before we wrap up this evening, Paulette?
Well, so much has been discussed, but I will just say that we are, as a nonprofit, Save American Salmon, we're always looking for people who are interested in joining our movement, and we have really a great team so far, and we are continuing to expand, especially our Earth Law team. But I would say so many incredible things are happening that when people have questions, just to go to our website, saveamericansalmon.org, and that way, you know, we can join what we're doing, because we're, you know, all over the country and just looking to activate tribes and tribal leaders, and even statewide leaders and national leaders. And that's what we're doing right now with myself. We're partnering with Emerge, growing women leadership, diverse women leadership voices in the state houses all across the country. Same with young elected officials who are vested in protecting the environment. We're supporting, advising, and helping encourage other young leaders to take the same mantle that we did in Idaho and here in the Pacific Northwest.
Terrific. Well, Paulette Jordan, it has been a pleasure to spend time with you this evening. Thank you for doing such a terrific job of helping us all understand a little bit about the rights of nature. I hope everybody in our audience wakes up every morning grateful for our earth and for the nature that's around us. And I encourage you all to get involved in your own way in connecting with nature, appreciating nature, just as the namesake of this lecture, Doug Walker, did so well. So thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. Thanks to the University of Washington College of the Environment and the Walker family for bringing this important topic to us every year so that we can all learn how to be better stewards of this one planet that we call home. Thanks very much, and I hope you all have a great evening.